So Neville talks of a case where a man needed to manifest $250,000, but it was a time when the economy was terrible, the lowest point in years. Stocks tumbled and tumbled day after day, many dropping 10 or 15 points a day, and on paper, billions and billions were lost. As far as the mind, they were lost. And there was no market to raise money for business. And nobody had money, no individual, no group. He had gone through the month of March, April, and in May, he called Neville, and he asked Neville to hear for him, because he could not get past the limitations of the mind, when all the time he was being surrounded by the bad news, what was on the papers, what brokers told him, what friends even said, and it simply looked like a greater and greater depression. He couldn't stop it. So Neville heard his good news. In his imagination, he turned the situation around, that this guy had his $250,000, so he could go on and create his manufacturing business, manufacturing special instruments. And when Neville hung up with this man, Neville says, "I did not leave the phone until I was self-persuaded that he had called me and told me of the good news, that he had his $250,000 to launch this new venture in. Well, he is here in the room tonight, and last night he gave me a letter setting forth the highlights of this entire state. I've given you the first 3. It was incorporated in the month of March. The need was $250,000. March and April went by, and in May he didn't panic, but everyone simply turned him down. Then he called me, and I've told you the exact conversation between the two of us. He is here in this city now, and in this statement he said, out of the blue, a broker called me and told me he heard of this new venture. He had investigated it and examined it, and he would like to underwrite it for $250,000, which he agreed to. So his need was $250,000, and he has raised between the call in May and this day $350,000. And they say because of the market, because of this, or because of that, it can't be done." And what Neville is teaching is that all things are possible with the power of imagination. Is there money that you want to manifest for something in your life? Are you too close to the problem? Feel free to write down what it is you want, and may anyone who reads it, may they take 2 seconds and hear your good news, and may you in turn do the same for others. So when we're too close to the problem, may we help each other until we build our experiences and convictions and need nobody on the outside. But maybe perhaps we still hear for another to keep our imagining and faith skills sharp. And Neville tells of another friend of his, a dentist, who bought a home 17 years ago, his first home, a lovely home for $20,000 in the hills of Hollywood. And this man, in those 17 years, had spent $10,000 renovating this home, adding a pool and other structural changes. So now the home was worth $30,000. But this man wanted to sell it for $75,000. And for 1 year, this man tried to sell it, but nobody could sell it. And Neville said to him, "Do you sleep in it every night? I know you do physically, but do you sleep somewhere else in your imagination and view this home from that assumed state? Well, if you had sold it, you couldn't sleep in it. You would have sold it. And if you sold it, you would be sleeping elsewhere. And because you had had the experience of this house, you would view it from the place that you now occupy and see it as something you had formerly owned that is not owned by someone else. If tonight you sleep in a state other than this state and view this house from that state, you will sell it. But you must, first of all, want to sell it. You want to let it go." And so Neville asked his friend, "Where would you go?" "Well, at our age, we could not get another home. We'd move into an apartment. It would be cramped for us, but nevertheless, we would move into an apartment." So they went to see an apartment at the La Brea Apartments, and they saw one they liked on the 10th floor. But they wouldn't move unless the other home was sold. And as he talked about it, painting a word picture of how they would only be able to take certain furniture since it was a smaller place, but it was perfect for just the two of them, and even their pets they would have to let go, let them go to other friends. And with all this, sleep in that mood, and view this home from that place. And then within a month, with no agent involved, a total stranger came to see it, liked it, and paid him in cash and asked them to get out in 30 days. And in 1 month, they are in their new apartment. He unloaded the house just at the amount he wanted, $75,000 in cash. And this was when the market was depressed, where you can't find people with cash because all the things have gone down, but he found it. So Neville's teaching, you first have to find everything that you want first in imagination. In this example, you see how he paints a word picture to help them catch that feeling, to help them tune into the reality. Is there somewhere else that you want to be? Whether it's exploring virtually or in real life, where would you be instead? And if you were, feel the different changes that would happen. Would you bring less stuff, more stuff? What things would you have to get rid of? What things would you have to buy? And when you go to bed tonight, you can close your eyes and you're already at the place you want to be. Sleep in that mood and persist. This man, it took a month. It may take you less or it may take you more. And Neville also shares his experience. When he was in New York City, and it was February, and there's snow all around, but for some reason he got daydreaming and felt himself completely in his mother's home, in Barbados with the tropical air, and it all felt completely natural. He was immersed, as we sometimes get in our daydreams, and he ended up falling deep asleep while imagining. And when he woke up, the snow was even higher in New York City, opposite to the state he had imagined while he drifted off to sleep. But 6 months later, he would be unexpectedly compelled to go to Barbados. His mother had fallen deathly ill. Neville teaches that there is a spiritual cause for every physical manifestation. We simply don't remember the harvest, the seeds we planted, the things we thought and felt or became influenced by. So part of it is becoming more aware, conscious, watching your thoughts more regularly, making that a way of life, and taking the time to also make the habit of imagining all your heartfelt wishes fulfilled. Neville says, so here in this world, even though the papers will tell you, the TV will confirm it, and all the magazines will add to it, that a depression is on, and they are letting people out and you can't get a job, and you must take a cut in salary in order to hold your job. Well, you listen to that, and you will simply confirm everything they suggest, for you are simply applying the same law. If you believe it, you are applying it. If you do not accept it and will not dream that dream, don't let them give you that kind of a dream. Just hold on to a new kind of dream, a better dream. This dreamer in you can do everything, and it does everything. So be careful to watch too much news, because you'll end up getting lost and wrapped up in that news and perpetuating that reality. But you can take that news and instead turn it around. What do you want instead? Record it and or write it down and or get photos that represent the mood of each of those wishes fulfilled, or at least the core wishes, the ones most important. The rest will take care of itself. You give yourself your own good news to become immersed in, and from this, have your imaginary conversations and or intentional daydreams, especially into sleep, or for some, they may feel better doing it upon awakening, or whenever feels best, maybe when you go on a walk after lunch. Neville says there is a man who is paid a huge salary to write in the newspapers to scare people to death. He writes headlines. That's all that he does as a job, to scare you to death every morning, if you will buy the paper. Some wonderful bit of news is buried in the last page or on some other page. But some horrible thing about someone you do not know, a big headline. They go all over the world to find an accident. Not satisfied with those they can find here, they go all over the world to find them, and then huge big headlines and scare you. So you pick it up, read it, and you start dreaming. But you don't have to do that. You have your own dreams, so you end your year with a different outcome. It's entirely up to you because you are the operant power. Neville is teaching you who you are and that you cannot turn to another if you know who you are. If you do, you give your power away. Morning, noon, and night you are imagining, and morning, noon, and night you are harvesting. If you want to know what you've been imagining, especially unintentionally, look all around you, and there's your harvest. So right now you can choose, do you want to plant good seeds or evil seeds? Do you want to plant the seed that will frighten you to death, or seed that is so altogether lovely when it comes into the world? Let what you want to grow grow in your mind's eye huge. What horrible dreams are you dreaming? To get even with this person or that? You can stop it now, regardless of what the world tells you, and start a new record, a new dream. Leave all the rest alone and start dreaming something entirely different. It starts with knowing, what do you want to be or do or have? And Neville says, if it were true, what would you see? And how would you see the world? And how would your friends see you? What would you say when you meet them? And what would they say of all the things that you now would like to be, you are? And where would you live if it were true? Would you still live in the limited state? Or would you live in a more wonderful place, in a better state? Well then, live there mentally. Learn how to use these type of questions to help bring it alive. Be in the habit of having such exercises to rehearse these imaginary conversations mentally or aloud, until you lose yourself in your vision and for a moment feel its reality. Just like when you fall into a daydream and someone has to tap on your back or yell your name to get your attention. But now you intentionally learn to do it. Practice makes perfect. In closing, Neville says, I am telling you the truth. So when you sleep this night, sleep as if it were true, and daily walk in that assumption. And that assumption, though false at the moment, if you persist in it, will harden into fact. Where will you sleep tonight? And as you go about your day, what assumption will you be walking in? Let's contemplate that, and now let us go into the silence. Good.